Hi, I'm Jen from Tea Leaves in Tweed, and welcome to another sunrise tea session. This morning it's a cooler spring morning again, and it's actually raining very, very lightly, so we'll see how long we can keep the tea session going outside. But today I wanted to share with you a Japanese green tea called Gyokuro. This is a premium, top grade green tea. It's actually shade grown for the last 3 weeks before harvest. So it's considered kind of the cream of the crop of Japanese green tea. And because of this, it actually needs to be treated a little bit more delicately. So I'm going to share with you how to brew Gyokuro tea to kind of get the most out of it. So today I'm sharing a Gyokuro Mecha tea, which is a tea that is made from the very tips of the leaves that sometimes break off during processing. It's still a very high grade tea, but because it is a broken leaf, it's a little bit more economical to buy. I bought this from an online shop called Yunomi, but they got it from a famous tea shop in Tokyo called Nakamura-En. And so I'm really excited to try this tea. This will be my first time trying it. So let's brew. So here we have our brewing setup. We have about 5 grams of our Gyokuro tea. And then we have this teapot. This is a special teapot specifically for brewing Gyokuro tea and very high-grade sencha. It's called a shiboridashi. It's a very small teapot with a very wide mouth so that the tea doesn't overheat and so that you can use just a little bit of water for the amount of leaves that you use. It also has these handmade grooves so that it's easier to strain the tea when you use tea that has very small leaves, like high-grade Japanese tea. And then we have a glass for our tea to go into. Gyokuro is known as jade dew, so I chose a clear blown glass vessel to show you the beautiful jade color. And of course I have my trusty watch for timing. Now, the first infusion of Gyokuro tea wants to be done at a much lower temperature than typical green tea. So typically it's done at about 120 to 140 degrees Fahrenheit. So I have water in my kettle right now that is just a little bit over 140 degrees Fahrenheit, maybe 145. But I'm going to cool it down and warm the pot up at the same time by pouring some water into my little pot and then transferring that water into my glass, which warms the glass a little bit and also cools the water down further. So now this will have cooled down probably around 20 degrees Fahrenheit. So this is now just a little bit over 120 degrees Fahrenheit. Now I'll put my Gyokuro tea in. I'm going to check my watch. And now we will add our water. Now, often you would brew Gyokuro tea uncovered to allow the tea leaves to really fully unfurl without damaging them or overheating them. However, because it's raining, I think I'm going to put the little lid on just to protect them from the rain. Now this brews for 2.5 minutes, and I think while this is brewing, I'm gonna go and put my kettle back on the heating element so that it can get a little bit hotter, because the later infusions want to be done a little bit hotter. Okay, it's been just about 2 minutes, and I'm going to check on my leaves. You can see the leaves, even though they're the small broken tips, have started to uncurl, unfurl, and get a little bit bigger, and they're a much brighter green. So now it's been just about 2.5 minutes. So I'm going to strain this and see how it's come out. Now one One of the instructions when brewing Gyokuro is to allow every drop to come out of the shiboridashi. That the saying is the whole universe is in the last drop. So the last drop is supposed to be the absolute best tea. So we'll let that drip for a bit. So I've got every drop of my Gyokuro tea here. And you can see this beautiful yellow-green jade color. So let's give this a taste. So I've got my cup of first steeping Gyokuro Mecha. It's not a very hot cup of tea, so there's not a whole lot of smell off of it. But it is an intensely savory cup of tea. This tastes like broth, like chicken broth, or even maybe some sort of seafood broth. It doesn't taste fishy, but it just has this taste of the ocean that Japanese green teas often have. This is a green tea from Uji, Kyoto, so it's a little bit closer in the south of Japan. Oh, it's almost salty tasting. It just reminds me of sitting on the beach in Scotland and smelling the ocean and eating fish, only it's tea. And that umami flavor, because this is a very high quality Gyokuro, there's almost no bitterness to it at all. It's just this very strong umami flavor. If you're not familiar with umami, umami is a kind of quality of savory food. It's often described in bone broths or soy sauce or hard cheeses like really good Parmesan. So it's that kind of, it doesn't have to be salty, but it's usually associated with savory foods. In this case, that umami almost mellows on your tongue and turns into a kind of sweetness. This is a very beautiful cup of tea. So like most of the teas I drink, Gyokuro can be brewed multiple times. So I'm gonna go and get my kettle back and finish my cup of tea, and then I'll show you a second steeping. Now I've got my kettle, and it's at about 160 degrees Fahrenheit now. So this hotter water will bring out more of the astringent tones in this tea. So let's give this a second steeping. Now the second steeping is much quicker. It's only about 15 seconds. So we'll cover the leaves with water. We'll give it 15 seconds. And then we'll strain it. Now, because this isn't that very, very special first steeping of Gyokuro, it's not quite as important to get every drop out. So you can see this is a little cloudier and a little darker and much greener. So let's give this a taste. So here I've got my second steeping of Gyokuro tea. This is a hotter cup of tea. So I can start to smell some of that light, oceany seaweediness to it. It's still got a very powerful umami character to it, except now there's a little bit more bitterness coming in. But it's a nice bitterness that kind of cuts through that almost thick umami mouthfeel. And it's a very bright bitter flavor. So it's got that a bit of astringency, a bit of tartness to it. The second steeping is a lot less powerful in the umami flavor. It's actually a bit of a more drinkable cup of tea. I could probably down the rest of this in one more gulp, but I will sip it slowly and patiently. And why don't we try and see what a third steeping would taste like? So now we're ready to do a third steeping of our Gyokuro tea. You can see the leaves have become a beautiful bright green color. Even though it's a broken leaf tea, you can see where some of those leaves have expanded a bit. So now we're going to take our 160-degree water and add it back again. Cover those leaves. And we'll give this 45 seconds to brew. A bit of a longer brew for the third steeping. These leaves have given us a lot of their flavor. Gyokuro is an amazingly complex tea, and in fact, as you brew it, it's almost like you're drinking different teas. As you brew it longer and longer, it goes from this complex, rich, savory umami tea to a more bright, classic Japanese green tea flavor. It's a very interesting tea, and if you're interested in trying it, I highly recommend this tea from Yunomi. It's got some really beautiful flavors, and it's not very expensive for really high quality Gyokuro tea. Okay, so now it's been about 45 seconds. You can see this is that same darker green, beautiful spring color. It's a beautiful tea for spring. Oh, this smells like fresh green fields. It almost smells a little bit like it does out here on a very lightly rainy early spring day. You can smell the grass. You can smell all the fresh new leaves that are coming out, and you can smell almost a little bit of that flower smell. So the umami flavor has mellowed quite a bit. This is a very bright, sunny cup of tea, which makes it perfect for a bit of a gloomy day like today. So I have my bright, sunny green tea for my rainy day. It's not very astringent, even though maybe a little bit more of those brighter notes have come out. I would not describe this tea as astringent. This is a really lovely cup of tea. It's almost like I'm drinking a third type of tea today. That very whisper of bitterness at the very tip of my tongue is one of the reasons I drink tea. Tea is not a sweet beverage. Even though teas can have sweet flavors to them, it's not a sugary beverage. It's a bitter beverage, or in this case actually a savory beverage for the first steeping or two. This steeping would cut very well through maybe some sort of sweet food, not too sweet. Maybe it's just because it's early in the morning and I'm a little hungry, although that first steeping was almost like breakfast, as thick as it was. But yeah, this is a very enjoyable tea. 3 steepings, 3 very different flavor profiles. I'll put the information about where I got it in the information box below if you're interested. And thank you for joining me today for this sunrise tea session. And I hope you'll join me again soon. Bye.